Revealed. The unexpected moment that transformed a 10M deal. You won't believe who he really is. Ethan Mason's heart raced as he stared at the glossy invitation to the board meeting, each word leaping off the page like a threat. Today could change everything. The 10 million project dangled before him like a baited hook, but a creeping dread gnawed at his gut. What if they discovered the truth about him, that he was just a construction worker, not an architect, not someone who belonged in that world? An ordinary man, hiding behind blueprints that once glimmered with dreams. As the clock ticked closer to noon, Ethan fought to quiet the swirl of thoughts racing through his mind. Could he truly stake his ambitions against a mountain of doubt? His fingers trembled against the edge of the table, memories of long-forgotten critiques echoing in his ears. "You're not cut out for this," they'd said, as he began to falter under the weight of responsibility. As he laid brick after brick, a sinking feeling returned. He'd let go of the very dream that had once sparked so much joy. Being a husband and father replaced the thrill of design with the anxiety of bills and empty savings accounts. Yet there it was, the opportunity that could lift him out of the shadows. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Walking into that conference room felt heavier than concrete. The firm's high-profile clients lounged around the polished table, their eyes glancing over him like he was a stranger. Ethan's heart tightened. Could he bridge the gap that loomed between him and his intended audience? He thought of the old blueprints he had stumbled across, sketches bursting with innovation. They belonged to his father, a man whose silence still echoed in Ethan's own insecurities. Would he honor his father's vision, or hide behind his own inadequacies? Thoughts of betrayal crept in again as he recalled whispers of envy at the firm. Colleagues pointing fingers, dismissing his raw talent while swirling in their polished facades. Who was he to fight for belongs in a world where credentials reigned supreme? Each moment that passed felt like sand slipping between his fingers as uncertainty settled in his bones. If he pushed back against the theft of his ideas, what would happen? Would he lose everything he had fought to build for his family? And then there it was, the dark secret about his father's legacy. The betrayal that had torn apart the fabric of their family, leaving Ethan to question his own roots. The weight of history pressed upon him, urging him to decide who he would become. As the meeting loomed closer, he found himself standing at a precipice, battling internal chaos. Was it worth it to step into this new light, knowing that the shadows of his past loomed so large? The question hung suspended in the air, thickening the tension as he breathed unevenly, muscles coiling tight with apprehension. With the door just inches from his hand, the blueprints of his father's heart flickered in his mind. Would this moment reclaim his family's legacy, or would he forever remain just a builder, locked away from creation? The decision slipped through his fingers as he swung the door open, the truth of who he really was hanging perilously in the balance. Ethan stepped into the conference room, a surge of adrenaline propelling him forward. The murmurs of conversation faded into an unsettling silence, all eyes honing in on him, dissecting his every move. He swallowed hard, a knot of uncertainty lodged somewhere deep within. This was it, the line between who he had been and who he dared to become. As he approached the table, he drew a breath, forcing his voice to remain steady while his heart pounded like a jackhammer in his chest. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. The pitch, the delivery, every detail. Today, he needed to harness the fragments of his father's designs, the ingenuity, the creativity that had once sparked within him. But would they see him as an innovator or dismiss him as someone clutching at nostalgia? He set his materials on the table, the edge of the blueprints peeking out like a lifeline. Glances exchanged among the clients, some curious, some skeptical, reinforced the feeling of being an outsider. Each set of eyes scrutinized him, as though searching for the truth behind the facade. "Thank you for joining me today," he began, his voice unusually firm despite the thrum of fear rattling in his chest. "I believe we have an extraordinary proposal on the table." As he discussed the project, drawing on the potential he saw, layers of doubt began to peel away, revealing a determination he didn't fully recognize. Was he capable of convincing these elite figures that he was more than just a laborer? Each point he argued fed his conviction that he belonged here, his expertise grounded in experience rather than traditional credentials. Yet, under the surface, the specter of his childhood loomed. Each concept, each drawing his father's legacy weighed heavily on his mind. He couldn't afford to falter. He was fighting not just for a contract, but for a validation that had eluded him his entire life. His father had died without seeing Ethan step into this world, and with every passing minute, Ethan could feel the crushing responsibility to honor that legacy. As he concluded his presentation, a wave of relief washed over him momentarily, but it didn't last. The clients exchanged glances, the air thick with anticipation. Vulnerability clawed at him again. They were judging not just his work, but everything he represented. As questions began to flow, he answered confidently, though each inquiry felt like a test of his worth. Then came the question that pierced through with surgical precision, as if they recognized the chains he had placed around himself. "What makes you think a construction worker is capable of bringing this vision to life?" The words hung heavy in the air. For a brief instant, time suspended, and Ethan's mind raced. How could he validate himself? This wasn't the moment to collapse under the weight of that label. He felt his resolve thicken, igniting a fire within. It was time to confront that definition head-on. "I've spent my life surrounded by building and design. These hands that have laid bricks also hold the vision to create," he said, voice unwavering. "I understand the essence of construction from every angle. My work is my artistry." For the first time, he noticed a shift. Was it disbelief or intrigue in their eyes? A ripple of curiosity broke the stoic facade of the clients, and in that moment, a flicker of triumph illuminated his core. The dialogue shifted, and the clients leaned in, eager for more. Each positive response wrapped around him like a binding force, weaving together remnants of his past with the possibilities of his future. But just as quickly, he sensed the ground beneath his feet was still unsteadied. As the meeting came to a close, the clients expressed interest in his proposal but left him with a challenge. "We want you to refine this and present it again next week." Disappointment shadowed the excitement soaring within him. Next week meant another round of insecurities, another confrontation with the doubts he thought he'd battled today. But this time he had a foothold, however precarious. The transition had begun, yet the real work lay ahead. He left the conference room, a mix of adrenaline and anxiety swirling inside him. The fight was far from over. Would he allow the fear of failure to define him again? Or would he press onward into this new terrain of opportunity? What awaited him next was a true test of his will. A new challenge loomed on the horizon, demanding he embrace the truth about his father and carve his own path forward. The clock was ticking. He had 1 week to find the balance between creation and legacy. As he stepped into the bustling street, he couldn't shake the thought that the next test would unearth more than just his skills. It would confront the shadow of his past head-on. Was he ready to face the ghosts that haunted his ambitions? Ethan paced the length of his tiny apartment, the walls closing in with the weight of his uncertainty. The exhilaration from the meeting faded to a gnawing anxiety, each step a reminder of the ticking clock and the expectations he now faced. Could he redesign a proposal that lived up to the intrigue he had ignited? With a week ahead, he felt both terrified and determined. Sinking into his battered armchair, he spread his father's blueprints across the lacquered coffee table. The creases that marked them held the ghosts of dreams, long past dreams that Ethan now had the chance to resurrect. He ran his fingers over the lines, tracing the complex angles that his father had labored over, and for the first time, he felt a strange fusion of pride and pressure. Could he do this without losing himself in the shadow of what his father represented? Pulling out his laptop, Ethan opened a blank document. The cursor blinked defiantly at him, a reminder that the work ahead required clarity and purpose. With a deep breath, he began to jot down notes. Innovative materials, sustainability, community-focused design principles. These ideas danced in his mind, igniting the same enthusiasm that had fueled his father's passion. Yet, a flicker of doubt wormed its way into his thoughts. What if he was merely a reflection of his father's vision, struggling to establish his own identity? Was he capable of moving beyond the impression his past had stamped onto him? Ethan pressed his lips together, forcing himself to confront that nagging voice. He needed to steer clear of the narrative that had shackled him for so long. This was his moment. Uniquely his. As he organized the notes, a realization settled: he had learned more than just the basics of construction under his father's watchful eye. He understood the nuances of materials, design, and the necessity for innovation. What if he merged the values he cherished with the edge of modern design? The afternoon waned into evening, and the golden light streaming through the window shifted into shadows. Ethan knew he needed feedback. He reached for his phone and called Maya, his mentor from his year in architecture school. "Maya, it's been a while," he said when she answered, his voice carrying a hopeful tone. "I need your expertise on a project I'm working on. Can we meet?" Her laughter echoed with warmth. "Of course, Ethan. I'd be happy to help. What are you up to?" He explained the proposal, his excitement spilling over as he described the community-focused elements he planned to enhance. As he spoke, he felt the constrictions of doubt begin to loosen, replaced with a sense of purpose. "I can't wait to see what you've come up with." Maya's voice emerged stronger, cutting through his fears. "Let us meet tomorrow. I'll be your sounding board." That evening, his spirits lifted. Ethan dived into research, deselecting materials that could elevate his design while remaining true to its core philosophies. Hours slipped away as he feverishly crafted drafts, merging sketches and theoretical concepts in a bid to articulate his vision. Each stroke of the pencil felt like a step further away from the boy who once felt swallowed by his father's legacy. With each emerging idea, Ethan confronted the possibility of ownership over his craft, yet the shadows lurked with the weight of personal expectations. He needed the proposal to shine, not just for potential clients, but to finally claim his voice in a world that was painfully aware of his lineage. Could he break free from that legacy without casting it aside entirely? The clock struck midnight, and fatigue settled heavy on his eyelids. He pushed away from the desk, gazing at the tumult of papers cluttering the table, a chaotic symphony of ideas and reflections. "This is just the beginning," he muttered to himself, a fleeting confidence washing over him. That a sudden thought seized him. Perhaps this was about more than just the deal. Ethan was on the verge of unearthing revelations about his own potential, reinterpreting the artistry of construction that he and his father cherished. What lay as a challenge was also a path towards establishing his singular narrative. As he drifted into sleep, Ethan had a nagging sensation he might be closer than he thought. He would awaken renewed, ready to reclaim his identity and redefine the foundation laid before him. But uncertainties loomed, ready to test him again. Would he find the courage to confront his legacy head-on? The first light of dawn brought a sense of clarity. He was determined. This was a pivotal moment. Would he walk into that meeting armed with the knowledge of who he was, or would fear once again sabotage his ambitions? The answers awaited him in the day ahead, but first, he had to confront the most challenging question of all. Who did he want to be? Ethan awoke with a sense of ambiguity, the bright sunlight pouring through the window illuminating the remnants of his late-night brainstorming session. His mind raced with fragments of ideas, each competing for attention, yet one question anchored him. Who was he beneath the weight of his father's legacy? With determination pooling in his gut, he began to prioritize his concepts, steering his vision away from mere imitation toward a unique expression of his artistry. After a quick breakfast, he donned a crisp shirt and blazer, a deliberate choice meant to instill confidence amidst the uncertainty. Standing before the mirror, he straightened his posture, taking a deep breath. This would be more than just a meeting. It was a revelation waiting to happen. Still, doubt clawed at him. Would Maya see him as his own man, or would the specter of his father overshadow his presentation? As he made his way through the bustling city streets, Ethan's mind orbited intensively around his proposal, reconstructing points he intended to emphasize. The vibrant energy of the surroundings infused him with a renewed resolve. He would channel not just his father's teachings, but also the insight he had gathered in school and through life experiences. It was not merely the design, it was the philosophy infused within it. Could sustainability gracefully infiltrate aesthetics? Could community needs dictate functionality? With each step, the fears of inadequacy began to fray. He approached Maya's studio, its glass facade reflecting the very essence he sought to embody, a blend of contemporary innovation and functional beauty. Stepping inside, the aromatic wafts of fresh coffee mingled with the earthy scent of raw materials that lined the walls. The atmosphere buzzed with creativity, bubbling like a cauldron of ideas waiting to spill forth. Maya greeted him warmly, her enthusiasm palpable. "Ethan, feels like a breath of fresh air to have you here. I'm eager to hear what you've put together." She motioned towards the expansive drafting table encircled by models, each a testament to her design philosophy. Ethan felt a rush of gratitude. Maya had always treated him as an equal rather than a shadow of his father. Focusing on her inviting demeanor calmed his nerves as he began to unfold the blueprints across the table. He meticulously explained each element, weaving in his concepts rooted in sustainability and community-oriented frameworks. He watched intently as Maya absorbed the details, her brow furrowing in concentration but her eyes sparkling with interest. "Ethan, you've tapped into something profound here, but I sense you're holding back on a few ideas," she said, narrowing her gaze thoughtfully. "What's the core driving this design?" Her question hung in the air like an unanswered riddle. Ethan hesitated, searching for a way to articulate the intimacy of his vision, the weight of legacy interwoven with his hopes and determination. "It's not just about constructing buildings. It's about building relationships with the environment and the community. I want to honor what my father started but speak through my own voice." Maya nodded slowly, her expression softening with understanding. "And what does that voice sound like?" The question echoed, reverberating inside Ethan's mind. He realized it was time to confront the nuances of his identity stripped of familial expectations. Rather than squashing his father's influence, he could reinterpret it, merging personal philosophy with learned aspects. After an intense session of feedback, Maya leaned back, crossing her arms, a contemplative look settling on her face. "This isn't just a project, Ethan. It's a declaration. You're at a crossroads of legacy and individuality. And that's where the magic happens." Her words set off a chain reaction of self-reflection. Could he dive deeper, exposing vulnerable facets of himself, ready to navigate the complexity of the proposal? This was not simply about impressing potential clients. It was about owning his story fully. As their discussion continued, the prospect of presenting the final proposal loomed closer. Yet, with it came the realization that embracing this moment meant shedding the hesitations that tethered him to his past. With renewed vigor, Ethan began to draft additional notes, entwining personal anecdotes and philosophies that reflected his transformative journey. But as he stacked his thoughts, he also sensed an impending sense of responsibility, weighing heavily on his decisions, something intangible that shrouded the path ahead. A sleepless night of reflection felt necessary. He would not merely step into the project as a designer but as someone with a story, depth, and intention that transcended his upbringing. They had laid the groundwork, but would he have the courage to architect his future in full view of others? The following day would not only unveil his proposed designs but reveal Ethan himself, stripping away any facade he may have worn. As he prepared to take that leap, he couldn't shake the unease tightening around his chest. Would he have the resolve to stand firm in his truth, no matter the outcome? As he looked out towards the bustling city horizon, Ethan understood the real battle loomed ahead. Not just against expectations, but against his reluctance to embrace authenticity. Would he step firmly into the arena of his destiny, ready to confront the anxiety bred from expectation? The clock was ticking, and the moment was at hand. As dawn broke on the day of the presentation, Ethan found himself pacing the small confines of his apartment, each step echoing the uncertainty that thrummed in his chest. The muted sounds of the city outside seemed to mock his internal tumult. He had spent the entire night drafting and redrafting, Yet the core of his proposal still felt elusive, as if it were a shape shifting in the shadows of his mind. His thoughts darted back to Maya's inquiry. What did his voice sound like? The very question sent jolts through him, igniting a determination steeped in fear. Here he was, just a few hours from exposing not only his plans but a piece of his true self to the world. The air thickened with the gravity of the moment. He was about to expose his beliefs, his aspirations, and the very essence of who he was becoming. Ethan stepped into the shower, allowing the water to wash away the remnants of doubt clinging to him. Instead, he envisioned the presentation, the room filled with potential collaborators, business partners, and critics. He could picture their faces, hear the anxious chatter, but as the steam enveloped him, he shifted his focus inward. He needed to capture their attention and hold it not just with concepts that shimmered but with a vision laced in authenticity. He dressed carefully, opting once more for the blazer that made him feel grounded. As the mirror reflected a young man poised between past expectations and the possibilities of the future, he fought against the urge to falter. This was a rebirth. He would not just inherit his father's legacy. He would reconstruct it through the lens of his experiences and perceptions. In the cramped car ride to the studio, the city rushed by, each familiar landmark whispering reminders of his roots. He glanced at the familiar shapes of buildings, each a testament to his father's craftsmanship. Yet he felt no resentment, rather, a sense of responsibility. His father had laid the groundwork, but it was Ethan's turn to forge a new path. Upon arriving at the studio, the bustle inside seemed amplified. Maya was setting up the room, arranging sketches and models with meticulous precision. She caught sight of him and offered an encouraging smile. "Ready?" Ethan nodded, but uncertainty still brewed beneath the surface. As they entered the presentation room, the dull chatter faded, and the audience turned their collective gaze toward him. He stood at the forefront, shielding his nerves with a facade of calm. Maya initiated the introduction, framing Ethan not just as a designer but as a visionary poised on the edge of innovation. The words resonated within him, igniting a flicker of confidence. Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped forward, the spotlight warm against his cool skin. He spread his blueprints across the table, each line a bridge connecting his father's influence with his own ideals. The blueprints, meticulously drafted, danced with vibrant colors and sustainable designs, weaving through concepts rooted in environmental consciousness and community engagement. As he began to speak, each word transformed his anxiety into strength. He delved into the philosophy behind his designs, explaining how they were not merely structures but vessels for interaction and growth. He described natural elements woven into modern spaces, fostering harmony not only within the built environment but between people and nature. He could feel interest building. Their expressions shifted from mere curiosity to genuine engagement. But as he progressed, doubt returned momentarily, lurking in the corners of his confidence. What if he faltered? What if his words fell flat? Just as those thoughts began to feign their way back into focus, he caught Maya's subtle nod of encouragement. It was a visceral reminder he was not alone in this endeavor. Finding himself lost in the intricacies of his design philosophy, Ethan dared to share parts of his personal journey, recounting formative experiences that shaped his understanding of legacy. With each personal revelation, he felt a weight lift. He was inviting them not just to see his work but to understand the why behind it. For the first time, he presented himself in front of them not merely as a designer, but as an individual navigating the complexities of expectation, ambition, and authenticity. As the presentation neared its conclusion, a palpable tension hung in the air. He had woven a tapestry of ideas, revealing the heart of his vision. Yet in that moment of clarity came another realization: if he was to truly carve out his identity, he needed to remain open to feedback and criticism, to accept that this was a collaborative journey, not the solitary path he had often imagined. As the final ideas flowed from his lips, he saw their faces illuminated by intrigue, some even leaning in to catch every word. Suddenly, it became clear the proposal transcended buildings. It was about reshaping perceptions. But just as the sense of triumph began to settle, Ethan's gaze locked with Maya's, and then darted toward the audience, where he spotted a familiar face among the crowd, a figure from his past. Would confronting this unexpected obstacle challenge the very essence of his newfound resolve? Or could it propel him further along his journey of self-discovery? The question loomed, heavy on his mind, as the moment of truth approached. The sudden appearance of the familiar face sent a shockwave through Ethan's mind, momentarily derailing his newly built confidence. He felt the color drain from his face as he instinctively locked eyes with the figure that had haunted his past, a once-cherished mentor turned bitter rival. Lucas, the architect whose once shining accolades had dimmed Ethan's aspirations, stood in the audience with an expression that was difficult to interpret. Was it disdain? Curiosity? A bead of sweat trickled down Ethan's brow, and for the briefest of moments, the carefully constructed world he had built around his presentation began to fracture. Would Lucas's presence dismantle the foundations of his newfound resolve? Ethan focused back on the room, on the audience whose attention he had captured. He forced himself to take a deep breath, grounding himself in the mission before him. The narrative he had weaved was not merely about designs or innovation, it was a testament to the evolution of his identity. Yet, with Lucas watching, Ethan battled the fear of judgment and lingering self-doubt. He could all but hear the whispers of his younger self questioning his capability. Determined to remain present, Ethan pressed on, diverting his gaze back to the blueprints sprawled before him. He adopted a rhythm in his speech, one that was stronger than the tremors splitting his insides. As he spoke about integrating community and sustainability, he reminded himself of the authenticity behind his passion, the real Ethan beneath layers of expectation and rivalry. But with every sentence, he felt the weight of Lucas's gaze hanging over him like a guillotine. Would Lucas dismiss his work with a simple scoff? Or worse, dismiss him altogether? His heart raced, propelling his thoughts into overdrive as he stuttered through the final portions, desperate to wrap up before anxiety could shatter his passion-fueled momentum. As questions flowed from the audience, Ethan caught Maya's eye again, seeking reassurance. Her steady expression allowed a sliver of confidence to bloom anew. He could harness Lucas's presence as a catalyst. He owed it to himself to confront his reconstructed reality openly. Any questions? He asked, deliberately meeting Lucas's glare. A jolt of adrenaline coursed through him, setting off an exhilarating response. Lucas raised his hand, the index finger waggling in a somewhat familiar manner. Ethan braced himself, his breath hitching in anticipation. Interesting presentation, Ethan, Lucas began, his voice cutting through the air with an air of authority that echoed years of experience. But how can your designs truly stand out in a market flooded with competition? Are you not merely recycling ideas cloaked in a new narrative? The room tensed as his words lingered, doubts laid bare. Ethan quickly calculated his response. Realizing the question wasn't just about his proposal, it was a strike at his very essence, a challenge to his belief in himself. With a newfound resolve, he faced Lucas directly. The landscapes we create should reflect our personal journeys, not just market trends. My vision embraces the idea that architecture can redefine relationships not just between structures and the earth, but between people themselves. My experiences shape my perspective, not just professionally but personally. As he spoke, the confidence surged back like an electric current. He could feel it, the connective thread between his upbringing and his current pathway. And, in this moment, galvanized by his recollection of both Lucas's past support and rivalry, he realized the importance of this confrontation. One last glance at Lucas unveiled something unexpected, the slightest flicker of intrigue. Did Ethan's words resonate within him, or was he merely masking disdain? Challenging the past and embracing his personal narrative seemed like a step forward, opening avenues he hadn't anticipated. The lingering tension was thick. He had faced his fears, but now he needed clarity about what was to come. Would Lucas's challenge catalyze a partnership transforming rivalry into mentorship, or would it solidify their divide? Ethan stepped off the stage, pulse pounding with adrenaline and uncertainty. He was changed, but the next phase loomed ahead, uncharted and daunting. Could this confrontation lead to new revelations about himself and his professional landscape? As the murmurs filled the air, Ethan's heart raced and he realized this singular moment opened a door. What awaited him beyond it was both exhilarating and terrifying. Where once he fought against his past, he now embraced the potential for transformation. Yet, as he processed the exchange, a question gnawed at him: could he meld his present aspirations with a newfound resolve? Or was the legacy he sought to build too heavy a burden to carry into the future? The answer lay ahead, shrouded in the unknown. Ethan stepped off the stage, his legs trembling ever so slightly as the weight of the moment washed over him. The murmurs of the audience faded into a dull hum, but the gravity of Lucas's question still echoed in his mind. It wasn't merely about the presentation. It was an interrogation of his worth, his identity as an architect. Fresh air hit his face as he exited into the corridor, and he paused, leaning against the cool wall for support. The adrenaline that surged through him began to settle into an insistent inquiry. How would he reconcile his desire for originality with the shadows of doubt cast by his former mentor? Lucas had thrust him into a crucible of self-examination, igniting anxiety as well as a flicker of motivation. And this confrontation, was it to be a final confrontation, or the start of a deeper dialogue? Maya approached, her reassuring smile breaking through Ethan's internal maelstrom. You held your ground up there. I saw it, Ethan. You really connected. Lucas may not be on board yet, but you planted a seed. Her words offered a moment of reprieve. With renewed vigor, he asked, but what if he's right? What if I'm just repackaging ideas instead of pushing boundaries? His voice was tight, a threadbare fabric of confidence unraveling at the seams. No one creates in a vacuum, she countered, crossing her arms, a gesture of earnestness. You're bringing your experiences into your craft. That's strength. You've got the vision. But if you let fear dictate your journey, you'll drown in it. He absorbed her words. They sloshed around in the turbulent sea of his thoughts. The landscape of his career had shifted, but navigating this new territory was daunting. He had always viewed conflict as a setback. Now it felt like a part of his evolution. The weight of Lucas's presence didn't just threaten to stifle him, it could ignite growth if he let it. Ethan closed his eyes for a second, centering himself. He thought of his childhood sketches, the dreams he had scribbled as a kid inspired by the architectural giants looming in his neighborhood. You're right. I can't focus on Lucas's skepticism. Instead, I need to refine my voice, my narrative, he said, slowly regaining his footing, pulse steadying. He vowed to confront Lucas again, fully unearthing the buried tensions between them. What if he challenged Lucas's perspective instead of recoiling in fear? Ethan understood that the architecture of his career depended on not just confrontation, but constructive dialogue. With each step toward the open hall, the din of the audience faded, replaced by the voices of his own ambitions. He envisioned how he would articulate his vision more clearly, fortifying it against the critical lens Lucas wielded. Rather than run from the ghosts of his past, he would empower himself by embracing them, allowing them to inform him, but not ensnare him. As he re-entered the breakout area, he scanned the crowd until his gaze locked on Lucas. The man stood, arms crossed, with features etched in skepticism yet softened with interest. They were on the precipice of an exchange that could redefine the boundaries of their rivalry. Ethan took a deep breath, fueled by the rising heat of determination. He challenged Lucas's preconceived notions of originality and worth. They would need to peel back layers of complex history, and he felt both anticipation and fear of the coming storm. In that moment, a fierce clarity settled within him. He would emerge from the shadows of doubt and emerge as a force, carving a space for his unique identity in architectural narratives. But first, he had to bridge the gap between them. And then, as if chiseled from the stone, he squared his shoulders, resolving to step forward and address the man who had once defined his ambitions. Would Lucas respond with the anticipated resistance? Or could there be an unexpected collaboration brewing beyond the animosity? The transformative choices loomed before him like architectural plans waiting to be realized. Ethan felt a magnetism pulling him toward Lucas, a force fueled by years of mentorship interlaced with bitterness. As he approached, he meticulously orchestrated his thoughts, crafting a strategy that blended assertiveness with openness. This encounter would not just be a duel of ideas. It would be a reckoning, a chance to reshape their relationship. "Lucas," Ethan began, keeping his tone steady. "I want to talk about what you said earlier." Lucas raised an eyebrow but remained silent, the tacit invitation clear. The air thickened with an intensity he hadn't anticipated, yet it invigorated him. "I get it," Ethan continued, his confidence surprising even himself. "You see originality as a sacred principle, perhaps the very heart of architecture. But I've been reflecting on your critiques. Are we really striving for originality, or just for its illusion?" Lucas uncrossed his arms, the shift in posture revealing a crack in his stoic demeanor. Ethan pressed on, emboldened by the flicker of intrigue in Lucas's eyes. "This journey of creation isn't just a solo endeavor. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't strive to innovate within those frameworks. What defines us is how we interpret and reshape those influences." Ethan saw Lucas's expression waver, and in that fleeting moment, he realized the discourse had transcended mere rivalry. It was shifting him away from a specter of doubt toward a sense of ownership over his ideas. Lucas leaned in slightly, "Innovation within frameworks, I like that. But tell me, how does that apply to your project? What makes it truly stand apart?" Ethan felt the thrill of the challenge and the urgency to define his vision further. His project had roots in tradition but branches reaching for the sky. "I envision a space that marries community with sustainability, where public interaction becomes part of the fabric, and where the architecture tells stories of its inhabitants. It's not merely about aesthetics. It's about creating an entity that breathes life and vibrancy into its surroundings." As he spoke, Ethan's earlier hesitance began to dissolve. Each word felt like a brick in the foundation of his evolving narrative, one he hadn't fully grasped until now. He was realizing that standing up to Lucas wasn't just about winning an argument. It was about asserting his identity as an architect capable of forging his own path. Lucas nodded slowly, deep in thought. "Interesting," he replied, a hint of admiration creeping into his voice. "But grappling with the how is essential. Are you prepared to justify that ambition when faced with constraints?" Ethan inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the question. Would he crumble under practical limitations or innovate despite them? Finding the balance between creativity and feasibility is part of the process. "But I'm committed to stretching those boundaries," he asserted, a newfound grit surfacing in his tone. Lucas seemed to regard him anew, as if viewing the blueprint of a construction yet unbuilt. "This might sound unconventional, but your ambition piques my interest, Ethan. Perhaps we can collaborate, design an approach that combines both our philosophies." A mix of jubilation and disbelief surged within Ethan. The partnership he had never dared to envision felt tantalizingly close, yet with it rose apprehension. Was he ready to build something new alongside the very man who had challenged his worth? As the thought anchored itself, Ethan realized this juncture was about more than just professional ambition. It was about confronting his fears and dismantling the barriers of expectation. Could he maintain his identity while embracing this unexpected breakthrough? They stood on the cusp of something profound, the air charged with a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Could Ethan redefine his trajectory in the architectural world? Not solely for himself but in collaboration with Lucas? A tide of potential surged through him, and he found himself pondering the roads ahead. And somewhere amidst the discourse, an unsettling thought emerged. What if? Lucas's interest stemmed not just from professional curiosity, but a desire to reclaim past ambitions? The very thought set his mind racing with possibilities and fears alike, igniting a fierce urge to not just forge ahead, but to prepare for the complexities of this unexpected alliance. Ethan's heart raced as the weight of Lucas's unexpected proposition settled in. The room had shifted from a battleground to a laboratory for ideas, a fact that both thrilled and terrified him. He looked Lucas straight in the eye, seeking confirmation that this wasn't just another ploy to undermine him. There, beneath the layers of mentorship and rivalry, he saw something different: recognition. But what was it going to cost him? "I will take your challenge," Ethan responded, his voice steady, imagining the project unfurling like a flower before him. But I need to ensure that our collaboration doesn't swallow my vision whole. It's vital to me that this space remains a reflection of what I believe architecture should embody. Lucas nodded slowly, and that's a necessary starting point. We'll both need to be transparent about our approaches. We might disagree, and that's acceptable, but our respect for each other's visions cannot falter. Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline surge through him, spurring him to consider how he would navigate this uncharted territory. He realized that collaborating with a mentor who had challenged him so thoroughly also meant engaging in a dialogue where he required clarity on his principles. It was a tightrope walk, but he sensed that the reward could be significant. Both their philosophies could coexist not just economically but artistically. Ethan visualized himself standing firm, navigating the hurdles of creativity and practicality, side by side with Lucas, rather than being swept away in the continual storm of influence. He felt the pieces falling into place even as uncertainty loomed in the periphery. "Let us set a timeline," Ethan proposed, his voice gaining momentum. "We can have preliminary sketches in a month and a working model within 3. Built on your insights, of course, but viewed through my lens." Lucas smiled, albeit tentatively. "That's ambitious. I like it. But you understand, achieving that balance of our ideas won't come easy. We'll face internal and external pressures every step of the way. Are you ready for that?" Ethan swallowed hard, the reality of the challenge penetrating his bravado. He wasn't just up against Lucas but also the architecture community, the clients, and even the ever-present voice of self-doubt that echoed in his mind. "I am." His reply came out more forcefully than he expected. It was a statement of faith, a conviction he hadn't known he possessed until this moment. "I will tell the story of the community through this space, and I won't dilute my vision in the process." With each passing moment, he realized that this venture had transformed from a mere project into a chance for personal growth. The partnership with Lucas became a canvas where he could paint not only the future of architecture in his style but also reclaim his own narrative. But the road ahead wasn't going to be without its trials. He had to brace himself for pushback, not just from outside forces but perhaps even from Lucas himself. Trust was fragile, and his fears could easily unravel the tapestry they were about to weave. Determination thrummed in his blood as he reached for his notebook, ready to draft sketches and ideas that would embody his newfound clarity. This synergy demanded not only creativity but unwavering resolve. He was stepping into a collaborative dynamic that would test him in ways he couldn't yet fathom. But within that uncertainty lay infinite potential. Suddenly, a sharp knock at the door shattered his focus. When he turned around, a young intern cautiously entered, his face a mixture of excitement and concern. "Ethan, you need to see this," he exclaimed, holding his phone tightly, eyes gleaming. "What is it?" The intern's words tumbled out as he stepped forward. "It's about the project. Something significant just came to light. You need to hear it." An icy shiver of apprehension danced down Ethan's spine. What could it be? Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, and the air around them felt electrified, laden with unvoiced tension. Lucas glanced at him, and for the briefest moment the earlier camaraderie felt sidelined, replaced by a mutual uncertainty. Ethan took a steadying breath, his pulse racing as he prepared to navigate this new revelation that could reshape everything they were trying to build together. What had they inadvertently stumbled into? The time had come to unravel the mystery that could challenge everything they intended to accomplish. Ethan sat across from Lucas at the small cafe table, the bustling city around them vibrating with energy. It felt surreal to be sharing this moment with a man who had once been an insurmountable rival. Yet here they were, architects uniting to explore the blueprints of their future, both professionally and personally. "Have you thought about how we want to present our collaboration?" Ethan asked, tapping his pencil against the notepad filled with sketches. He had spent endless nights refining his vision, but what truly excited him was the dialogue they created together. Lucas, surprisingly, had become an ally rather than an adversary. "I want to highlight the intersection of our approaches. Your vision for sustainability alongside my emphasis on aesthetic brilliance could redefine what architecture can mean for communities. Lucas replied, gazing thoughtfully out of the window. But it must be grounded in authenticity. We need to explain how our journeys inform our designs. Ethan nodded, feeling a surge of validation. This was more than just a professional pivot. It represented personal growth. Instead of shrinking in the face of challenge, he had learned to confront his fears and build connections, even unexpected ones. I appreciate your willingness to blend our philosophies, he acknowledged. It's liberating to see the potential for something greater. Days turned into weeks as they both immersed themselves in their work, each meeting unfurling new perspectives and ideas. The project began to take on a life of its own, shaped by their collaborative spirit. They found themselves pushing each other toward unthinkable horizons, integrating cutting-edge technology with verdant landscapes, a true synthesis of human ambition and environmental consciousness. A month later, they stood before an audience of investors, excited clients, and industry experts, unveiling their vision. The presentation went flawlessly. Ethan spoke passionately about community-centric designs while Lucas illustrated the stunning visuals and possibilities that Ethan's ideas could manifest. For the first time, he felt a robust sense of his own expertise without overshadowing Lucas. They were equals, blending their respective legacies into one coherent narrative. After the presentation, during a reception filled with applause and laughter, Ethan was approached by a prominent investor. "Your design is brilliant. It speaks to both the current and future needs of our communities," she stated, a meaningfully genuine smile lighting her face. In that moment, Ethan realized they were being recognized not just as collaborators but as innovators changing the narrative of modern architecture. As Lucas stepped to his side, he whispered, "We did it. This is just the beginning." In that instant, a wave of accomplishment washed over Ethan. He had not only reclaimed his identity but had also redefined success through collaboration and respect. The shadows of doubt began to fade into a bright future marked by authenticity and shared vision. He was no longer merely the son of a builder. He was an architect in his own right, establishing an identity forged through the lessons of his past and the promise of the future. Standing amidst the celebration, Ethan felt an invincible sense of confidence. The fears that once anchored him now transformed into pillars of strength. He had proven not just to the industry but to himself that he was more than what he was perceived to be. He was not merely living in the legacy of his father, but carrying it forward, infusing it with his own voice and beliefs. As they raised their glasses, celebrating the exhilarating venture ahead, Ethan knew he was ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. He was equipped with insight, vision, and the invaluable recognition he had long sought. He belonged. And as he looked across the room, he thought of the journey ahead, filled with endless possibilities yet to be designed. This was only the beginning. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Conclusion. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation and triumph. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help people discover stories that matter. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. You are part of this journey.